We're really thrilled that you decided to join us today. It's the first of a new series of webinars that we're launching at G-Shapes AI, and I'm very excited to kick it off with the wonderful Nimisha Tailor. For those of you who do not know G-Shapes AI, we've just celebrated our first anniversary. We work at the forefront of female leaders and entrepreneurs, responsible AI and social impact. Sort of this is the focus of our work. And it's our ambition to show what's possible when AI is done well. Our flagship program are the G-Shapes AI Awards that showcase amazing work by female leaders in the space globally, and we will launch our next edition in the fall. And our heart and strength and powerhouse is our amazing community. And if you're interested in joining us, feel free to reach out. So maybe a little bit of housekeeping. We will have approximately 50 minutes now. We want this to be a very engaged event. So we're also looking forward to bringing in your thoughts, your questions via the chat. We will probably have like half an hour of conversation between Nimisha and I, and the rest will be focused on bringing in your questions. I'm gladly introducing Rachel, our Director of Programs and Partnerships here at G-Shapes AI, and she will monitor and animate the chat. Please pose your questions and thoughts there throughout the entire conversation, and Rachel will then make sure that we see them and bring them in. And if you want to, you can already start by introducing yourselves and maybe put in your LinkedIn if you like. And finally, the question will be recorded for our purposes, and we might be publishing some edited versions, but we will not have you there, obviously. Okay, well, let's get started. As I said, my guest today is Nimisha Tailor, the author of The Female Digital Revolution, and usually based out of Singapore, but a citizen of the world. Nimisha looks back at a very impressive career. She is a competition and regulation specialist and has advised large companies, central banks, think tanks, and international organizations in the areas of digital finance, digital trade, data governance, e-commerce, and logistics. She has extensive international experience and brings a gender lens to digital policies and regulations. There's so much more to say about Nimisha and her work, but I suggest we explore her and her work during our conversation. So welcome, Nimisha.
Thank you, Dr. Julia. Thank you so much for inviting me for the launch of your She-Shapes AI. It's a real pleasure. And thank you to everyone that has joined this webinar too as well, whatever time of day it might be, wherever you are. So I'm dialing here in from Singapore. So lovely to meet you all.
Thank you, Nimisha. Well, let's dive right in. I suggest your book is called The Female Digital Revolution, right? That is a very, very powerful title. I like it a lot. And so to kick it off, could you share a little bit about the book's history? And also, when was the moment where you were like, well, I will sit down and write this? And also, why did you decide to call it The Revolution?
Wow. Okay. Thanks a lot, Julia. Why don't I start by telling you a little bit, sort of going back to how it all really sort of started. And I think I'd say that a key theme that probably inspired me is change. And when I say change, both from a professional perspective, but also from a personal perspective. So let me tell you what I mean by a professional change. So I spent most of my career actually working in government. I worked in government in 3 different continents, originally from the UK, where I started off my career. I worked in government in New Zealand, and I also worked in government in Singapore as well. And as a government economist, I've had the opportunity to analyze and look at the competition landscape in so many different markets. So across 3 decades, I've been able to look at so many different industries, from manufacturing to retail to banking to pharmaceuticals. And one of the things that I've been able to see is just how the nature of these industries has changed over time. I've been able to see how technology has been increasingly being used over time as well. I take, for example, when, Amazon used to actually just be a small bookstore online. Look at what Amazon is now. Here in Singapore, we have a ride hailing app, just like Uber, but it's called Grab. But now it's known as a super app where you can do virtually everything from ordering your food to doing your banking, um, to buying insurance, to doing absolutely anything on this super app. And even how we make payments. We can use our mobile devices to how we do our banking. And even in Singapore, we are trialing palm recognition technology. So I've been able to see these changes in these markets. And then on a personal level, as I've moved across different decades and different continents, particularly when I started doing volunteer work, I started mentoring. And I actually had a mentee that asked me a question and said to me, how did you get started in your career in tech? And I paused. And I think that was a great question because it really made me think, am I really a woman in tech? Because at the time, I'm working on digital policy. So I'm looking at competition involving digital big tech. I'm also looking at how policies to regulate, whether it's data or AI, it kind of at that moment where I sort of thought, where do I fit in? And that really sort of sparked me thinking about representation, just not just for me personally, but what does that mean in every aspect of our economy? And so basically, I started doing some research because I was curious. I started doing some interviews with women who were in different parts of the world because I was curious. Because obviously, being here in Southeast Asia, we are quite technologically advanced. I wanted to get a different perspective. And so I found some amazing research, some amazing women that I was interviewed, and that really decided to put all this material into a book as a way of being both inspiring and informative. And in terms of your question about why did I call it a revolution and how did I come up with the title? I think it's a real reflection of what I was seeing and what I still see. When I was talking to these women, when I started even doing more volunteer work, communities I'm a big fan of, and the wonderful community that you have too, I was seeing amazing things that women are actually doing. And they're doing it because they're following a purpose, a mission to drive some form of change that they're passionate about, whether it's climate change, whether it's to do with poverty, whether it's reducing waste, whether it's improving financial literacy. I just see that women are not just asking for a seat at the table. I see so many women that are basically building their own table, and not just one table, but thinking about the next table. So maybe we even have a whole restaurant of tables. That's the extent that I'm seeing. And I just felt as if that I wanted to celebrate that in the book because I don't think we are talking about or showcasing that as much. So I hope that answers your
Yes, it
question.
does. It does. Sorry, I was just struggling with the with the audio. Thank you, Nimisha.
No
No,
problem.
I really enjoyed that. Also, the how you finished off by saying the women are you see women building their own table and not just their current table, but also moving forward. And you're talking a lot in the book about the female digital economy, right? And would you be able to tell us a little more about what that actually is and what you think? Its growth looks like right now, or what you've seen over the years, and also what factors are driving it.
Sure. So a lot of what I just start by just describing what I mean by digital
Yeah.
economy,
Mhm.
because as I said, that as I see lots of different markets basically being transformed, finance, health, education, technology is being used in some shape or way, and obviously more increasingly, the main technology we're seeing is obviously AI. And as you see a lot of this technology being used, whether it's by organizations or whether it's helping to do cross-border trade, is another area that I do focus on, we're seeing much more of that digitalization, much more of economic activity involving some level of digital input. And so there in the book, and quite often in a lot of my work over the years, I use the OECD definition that basically talks about a digital economy involving any economic activity that uses, whether it's digital infrastructure or a digital service, or uses data. And that digital economy is growing as more and more industries are obviously using technology. So when I look at the digital economy, when I then marry it up with saying, well, what am I seeing in terms of the role of women? I see the role of women actually changing. And when I think of the role of women, I also think of them as really important digital economic agents that play a different role in every aspect of our economy. And so what I talk about in the book is those different roles that women play. And essentially, it's four roles. I talk about the role they play in government. That's drawing on from my own experience. Women who I talk about being in digital government, that designing digital policies or e-government services. Then I talk about the role of women is digital business leaders. Mm-hmm. So these are women that are working in our banks, our hotels, our schools, that are leading large digital transformation projects, possibly. Then we have the digital entrepreneurs, the women that are the startups that are basically, creating their own businesses in some shape or form. And then I call the last one digital consumers, because women are powerful consumers that are making large purchases. There's a variety of different things online. And the reason why I talk about those different roles is to recognize the economic contribution that women are making in those roles, and also how they are basically active in every different aspect of our industry.
Thanks very much, Nimisha.
And so in terms of so in terms of the drivers, I'd probably say three things. The first is accessibility. Accessibility to technology is the first thing that is helping that drive. As more and more women get access to digital services or digital tools, that is really helping them to do more things. The second is affordability. So you might actually have access to a lot of this technology, but if it's become cheaper, now we can do these sorts of things and it doesn't cost a thing. And one of the beauties of using WhatsApp is there's absolutely no cost involved when you're compared to the days when you were making international phone calls. And then the third thing I'd say, the quite important factor, is digital literacy. So your understanding of how you can basically navigate and use these technologies in a safe way and to keep yourself secure as well.
Yes. You've talked very beautifully about the growth and also about the opportunities, right? But you're also saying in your book that there are missed opportunities. Can you maybe talk a little about this? What are these missed opportunities that you identify?
Sure. So you'll notice in that if you've started reading the book, or if you get to read the book, I don't really use this word barriers. So quite often, and a very common question I've had, particularly from students, young female students, have asked me, well, what are the barriers? What are some of the things that are preventing? And I don't really use the word barriers deliberately. And I reframe this, instead of actually thinking of what are the things holding women back, my focus is really talking about what are the opportunities. So forward looking. And so whilst I see what I talked about at this beginning, this amazing female digital revolution, I see potential, way more potential. So when I talk about missed opportunities, these are things that where I think there are areas where you can make that digital revolution even bigger. And I would say that there are basically four areas where I think there's scope for more opportunity. The first is links to what I talked about before in terms of accessibility. Whilst we have, I don't know about yourself, but can't live without it, for both personally and professionally. But many people around the world don't have access to a smartphone. They don't even have access to the internet. And so for many developing countries, there's still the question of actually getting access to smartphones. And when you give women access, you're basically giving them economic empowerment, not just independence, but you're opening up a whole world, the same we are benefiting from having these digital devices to benefit us personally and professionally. The other area where is a missed opportunity is in terms of innovation, which Rachel mentions, in terms of designing these devices, apps, or software that better caters to women.
Mm-hmm.
So there are lots of more scope for that to do that. It's almost a missing market, I feel, in some areas, especially for someone like myself. We have an aging population in many countries around the world. Managing women's health at different stages, whether you're young or you're a young mother, or whether you're into your 50s, where you're dealing with perimenopause or menopause, we are living longer, having better access to innovation, that great use of technology that can help us in this stage of life. And that's just one example, in terms of digital banking, for example. There are a lot of women who don't even have a bank account, let alone have a digital bank account. There's a lot of women that don't have access to a whole range of digital financial services. So there's more scope for innovative fintech players to come in and service that market, because some traditional banks, if you don't have the right documentation, you don't have a credit history, for example, they start thinking of it being perhaps maybe being a high risk. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you've got innovative solutions that can overcome this, for example, having different form of digital identities or biometrics that help you if you don't have the right paperwork, this could be another way. Okay. And the other two areas are in relation to the fact that, AI, we get constantly asked, what are the benefits of AI? And I'd love to hear from the audience, how many of you think that there are benefits? At the same time, there are challenges to AI in terms of potentially having algorithms that are biased and could potentially discriminate women. And this matters in terms of accessing those digital services, for example, job applications, housing applications, if you're looking for social support from government, if organizations or businesses are using AI, but they are not using it in a way that is fair and ethical, then there is a real concern that women may potentially lose out. And then the fourth area that I think there's a real missed opportunity is to be simple in terms of saying, women, you're needed in every aspect, because if you don't show up, you won't be counted. And if you're not counted, there's no data about you. And if there's no data, that makes it difficult to make sure that we've got new innovations that basically tailor to your needs. So in sum, I would say there are 4 missed opportunities, and that if we could address those, then I really think we can reach our full potential for the female digital revolution.
Thank you, Nimisha. I think this is crystal clear, right? The way you frame it. I think an interesting question is how can we make sure that this is also being, your recommendations are reaching the right people who can then, help implement and take the right decisions in order to, to make sure that we're making the most of these opportunities and no longer miss them out. But maybe there's something we can come back to a little later. Um, and I also think you've made a beautiful case for why we need more innovation from women for women, right? Because this is something that's very often not on the radar, but we're missing out again here on leveling the playing field and way more. So I would like to go a little deeper in your book. You're talking about, obviously the digital economy, but you're also talking about digital skills and about superpowers. And I really love that concept of the superpowers. So what is it all about? Tell us a little about this and also share with us what are your superpowers, Nimisha?
Right, thank you. So let me tell you how I started talking about superpowers. So several years ago, I had a headhunter ring me up and was sort of going through sort of interview questions. And he said to me, so very breezing through all the questions, usual kind of interview type questions to get to know me. And then he asked me, okay, so what's your superpower? And I was just sort of paused. I thought, what? And then I was like thinking, okay, this is not a question about what are your strengths or what are your weaknesses. He was actually asking for something much stronger and much bigger. He was asking me, what is it about you, Nimisha, that makes you unique and stand out because you have got this amazing superpower that will just make you a great candidate? And that really stumped me because I'd never been asked that question before. And I didn't know what the answer to that question was because I just didn't really want to think of this as strengths. And so again, I went through that moment of reflection, and this is what being doing mentoring has really helped me to do. And by doing actually volunteer work, to be honest, I started doing some professional volunteer work, helping on a nonprofit on some advisory work. That I started working with people from very different backgrounds to me. And it was there that I actually realized where my natural strengths were. Because when you're in government, everyone else is a government official. I worked as in a regulator. We did investigations. Everybody had really good analytical skills. Everyone was very intellectually curious. You thought that was the norm. And so one of the things I discovered through this volunteer work is that I'm actually very good at critical thinking. I'm very good at asking questions. And I think that becomes why, from the experience of running investigations, where that ability to ask questions and be comfortable asking it in any environment has basically allowed me to learn a lot and move between different roles, different volunteers, do different things, write a book, for example, connect with people. And so I think I wanted to talk about it in the book because I think it's so important now to start thinking about how we use these digital tools, but use them on their own, they're meaningless. But if we combine it with our own skills, and the things that we're good at, think how amazing that is. And so you are working to your advantages. You are using your soft skills and you're using that superpower. And I'm a believer of using the superpower because there are things that I'm not very good at. There are things that we are all not good at. And why don't we find the person that is good at those things and work naturally on the things that we're good at? And to be honest, that's the advice I got myself from a mentor, which has stayed with me and has benefited me. We come from a place of strength. So when it comes to thinking about whether it's a personal goal or a professional goal, know what your superpower is and use it more, show the world what that is. Um, and that will definitely help the female digital revolution.
I think this is so powerful, Nimisha. I think we will launch a call for, to all the ladies, identify your superpower and be proud of your superpower, right? And talk about it
Absolutely.
and find
Absolutely.
people who can support you in it and who complement you. I really think this is such an important concept. So thank you for sharing this, and also thank you for sharing your own path, right, to finding it. Um, yeah, really beautiful. This was really also your story, very much connected to your story and your own, path to it. And in your book, you share a number of stories and research, right, from all over the world. And I was wondering whether you would like to share one story with us that really resonated with you, or for, all kinds of reasons that impressed you, and maybe, just explain to it what it is, and also to explain why, this particular story resonated so much with you.
Well, that's a tough one, Julia. So in the book, I deliberately talk international examples because I think it's so important to recognize there are loads of things that we could learn or resonate with women who are on the other side of the world. So I talk about basically women from the Middle East, from Latin America, from the UK, Australia, New Zealand, the US, Europe. And I talk about stories or use examples of women that are very well known on the international stage, whether it's in relation to AI, a Nobel Prize winner. But one of the things I also do is I share stories of ordinary women, ordinary women that are change makers in their communities and in their workplaces. And I think one of the stories that I want to share that probably really comes to mind is a story by Shagufta. So Shagufta is a cybersecurity specialist. Um, she's from my hometown in Luton in the UK, which is something that obviously there's a connection to. But one of the things when I was talking to Shagufta, and she was telling me about her career journey and her work. So she does a lot of training. So she does a lot of training on cybersecurity to companies and organizations to help them make sure they've got the right IT processes put in place and what to do if you are affected by a data hack. So a lot of courses. And she also does run some of these courses in schools, for example, helping young children also stay safe online. But one of the things that she shared with me was a time when she was just saying, well, a lot of these training courses that I do, the people on the courses are men, and it can be quite intimidating. And quite often they don't really realize that she's actually there to train. And then she shared with me this one moment where someone came, and a gentleman, and throughout the whole 1 day course, he just kept asking her so many questions. And whilst it's great to ask questions, but when it's the same person, and so she says, first few were okay, that's sort of fine. And then he just kept asking these questions. And, she just kept answering the questions, but she just was getting really, really frustrated with that. And then at the end of the day, when the course was finished, everyone was packing up to go. He came up to her, and you can probably imagine she didn't say anything. But if I was her, I'd be thinking, oh my God, he's not going to ask me another question. You know what I mean? I've just survived the whole day.
Mhm.
I've answered your questions. What more could you possibly ask? And he basically said to her, I've never met someone that's been able to answer all my questions. Now, that might sound like a very simple story, but to me, there are many things about it that I love. One is the fact that she's a change maker in her local community. You don't have to be on an international stage to make a difference. The other is the courage of going into that room, knowing that you're an expert on a subject matter, being a professional, showing up. And that comes back to that representation matters, particularly in male dominated areas, because if you don't show up, they won't know. They won't know what you can contribute and what you can actually value.
Mhm.
And the other thing that I loved is that I'm sure that is the fact that she was sharing, that's going to stay with her for such a long time. And it's just that personal validation and a reminder to herself that, you know what? Yes, I do know my stuff. Um, and to actually have that as a compliment. So I think that's just one of the stories that I really wanted to put in the book. And as I say, I'm sure many of you in the audience are, making small changes that you think are not important, but when really we are making impact. You don't have to be on the international stage to do it.
Thank you. I think this is a beautiful example, really, because as you said, it's not someone who is, at the global stage and speaking wildly about the work, but it's something I think that everyone can relate to, right? And that again is this superpower of being there, being present, being out there, being courageous, and not being intimidated. And this is something I think very encouraging and very brave and beautiful. I would love to open for a question or two to our audience. So I'm turning to Rachel. Rachel, would you like to share a question that we've received?
So far, no questions are coming in.
Do we have a question? Is any of your ladies inspired to ask a question? If not, obviously I'll continue asking my question, but I love to I love to hear you as well. And maybe also sharing something that resonates or where you have further questions for Nimisha.
Yeah, and feel free to either unmute yourself or you can just pop that into the chat.
I'd love to hear what some of you are doing. Anything, uh, when I talk about the female digital economy, I talked about different roles. So, any women that are in government, anyone that's entrepreneur.
Maybe while you're thinking about this, maybe because obviously we have a lot of women in our community who are working in AI or aspiring to work in AI. And so I was wondering, Nimisha, if you have any recommendations, right, for women who are trying to navigate this space of tech and the digital economy and seek to be at the forefront of the digital revolution. What is it that you would like to share with them from your experience, but also from everything that you have, put into the book?
I think this is a nice question, and really sort of sums things up because as I go back to right at the beginning, it is about opportunities. And so when we're talking about AI, there are a lot of opportunities that are out there. There's two camps. You see ones that are very much afraid and very concerned about it, and those that are already adopting it, already ingrained in some shape or form. The question is really that there are both risks and there are opportunities, but there's opportunities to make AI much more safe. So I think that's where I see there's that the opportunities can be materialized in a safe manner by actually having the right guardrails and ethical principles put in place. But one of the things that I am sort of seeing is, I'm not sure how it is in some of the countries the ladies are in, but certainly here in Southeast Asia, we are seeing amazing amount of startups, and startups using AI in some shape or form. And quite often we're having a lot of startup pitching competitions where these really innovative ideas. So that is, I think, is wonderful, and it's so amazing to see, particularly the women that are doing this as well. But I think one of the questions that keeps coming back to is sort of saying, be clear on the problem you are trying to solve. And so, what is it, what's the real world problem you are trying to solve? Whether it's a pain point that a company is experiencing or a customer is experiencing, or whether you are trying to deal with a real world problem, whether it's climate change, waste reduction, famine, increased representation in sports, or something to do with the arts, have a clear problem definition. And also understand that the competitive environment around your solution. Or if you work in a company, understand where your company fits in the bigger market. Because I think when you then have that commercial understanding and that understanding of that competitive landscape, that helps you to have a very compelling story to build your business, to investors, to your customers. And you're taking that as being the first step, and where the opportunities, the technology, the AI is just a tool. It's either a tool to be more efficient, or it's a tool that you are using that is the key part of your product. And I think the other point that I'd also want to make is that whilst a lot of talk is about generative AI, and yes, there's a lot of productivity gains, but the thing that I'm very interested in is the AI that can be used to help diagnose diseases a lot easier. Cancer, dementia, heart diseases. If we can track some of these, maybe just through the scan of your eyes or through a simple blood test or something simple that can make detection quicker, and we can take action. AI that can be used to combat fraud much quicker. So as soon as you see a transaction that looks suspicious, or something that basically protects us from scams. So AI in the form of robots that can help manufacturing, that can help with, from a business perspective, that can deliver social outcomes. That's where I think the real breakthroughs will be.
I couldn't agree more, Nimisha. I love, your focus on asking the question first, what is the problem that you want to solve? And then, second, and I think that's a problem because very often we see, how this is being turned around. So second, the question, what kind of tech do I use to address it, right? And not putting the tech first or the AI first, or sprinkle some AI dust on something just because it's fancy right now, but to really zoom in on what is the problem that I want to address and what is the real world problems that I want to address. And I really think this is a superpower that women have, right? Because we are very oftentimes connected, to issues. We see what's happening, rooted in communities, and then to be able to put the finger on the pulse and say, this is something that I want to address. Also, to then.
You're absolutely right. Just building on that, Julia, you're absolutely right, and that's one of the things that also inspired me in the book. Women are championing a lot of these social causes. And naturally you sort of have that kind of trait. So yes, totally agree. Yes. And I've also seen some great questions coming through.
Okay. Yes, so maybe we can take Natalie's question. So what is the easiest way, she writes, to educate yourself on everything AI? It's changing so much with so many different tools that it's difficult to keep up. And it would be really great to be able to enter a conversation, she writes, and feel confident sharing an opinion on what is being discussed instead of feeling completely out of depth. Are there any specific resources that are helpful? Thank you for this question. I think it's a great one.
Yes, it is. It is. I would say, first of all, I'm going to say I'm not an AI expert. And I'd also say that I think most people are not. I'd be surprised if they were, if I was sitting around a table amongst AI experts. And the reason why I'm saying this, because this technology is new and it's evolving. And so I've had the pleasure of meeting a lot of different people who are working on AI from different perspectives, whether it's from ethics perspective, or they are using it to create new models, or they're using it in their business or in their industry. But I come at it from a different perspective as well. And so what I think is in this is not to worry about being an expert, but being comfortable in getting yourself in conversations with other people. So communities like these, attending events, reading, doing your own research. Some have even taken, there's a lot of courses online that you can do as well. But then also asking those questions. I come back to my natural superpower, because one of the things that I've trained myself to do, every time I ran a new investigation, I would work on an industry that I would sometimes know nothing about. And so I would actually need to go and meet with companies and meet with people, and I would have questions to ask them. And I would basically ask what I call baby questions, and I don't try and ask the basic questions. Sorry, what does this do? I don't understand. Or try and explain it to me as if I'm a 5-year-old. So I'm a fan of simplicity. So when you go to a lot of these events, ask questions. And that's a good way of actually learning from each other. What do you mean by this? Because one of the things that I bring in terms of my expertise is that I've been involved in designing regulations and looking at a lot of regulated markets. And so what I bring to the conversation is about how do we, or should we be regulating AI, and how heavy-handed should we be? Europe has a law. Here in Singapore, we have a much softer approach. And so when you have these conversations with maybe the AI expert, well, one of the things I do is ask them, tell me how the technology works. But then I need to also talk about my perspective of saying, well, what are the risks that could be involved in that technology? So a different way of answering your question, Natalie, but I would definitely say one of the things I've benefited from is reading, going to different community, being part of different communities. Like I said, She Shapes AI, definitely a wonderful community to be part of, continuing those conversations, going to conferences, meeting different people. And I think not to feel as if it is moving rapidly, and instead of thinking, oh, I've got to stay on top of everything, I don't think I've met anyone who is staying on top of everything. And if they are, I think I'd be a bit worried, because I think you're lying.
Usually, I think that's a really good point. And Natalie, if I can also chip in, I think this is something that we hear so often from women. I'm not confident. I really want to be confident before I talk about AI. And I really think that's fabulous. But, this also means that, there are others who are just out there and, they think because they can put a prompt into ChatGPT that they master AI. And that is clearly not the case. And as Nimisha said, it's very difficult to find real experts, true experts. So I think just go out there and be confident. Well, for sure, you already have something to add to the AI discussion because of the expertise you are based in and that you've accumulated throughout your life. And then, yes, obviously, there are resources for you to get even a better understanding, if a deeper understanding. But really, I think it's, I would like to appeal to women to overcome this hesitation, right? And just be there, ask the questions, and be confident about you actually also being able, we're always saying you don't have to code, you don't have to be an expert in AI. I think we have too many of those already, but we need the ones who are really asking the tricky questions. And we have another question from Mohini, Nimisha, if I may. So she writes, do you have any examples of digital transformation and women that didn't make it into the book that you really wish they had?
Oh gosh, another good question. In terms of digital transformation, if I'm honest, there are many examples, but if you're thinking about yourself, every industry, you know, is being, some shape or form needs to transform because we are all going online. And whether you are a health business, whether you're a vet, whether you are in hospitality, whether you're in F&B, you need to have that level of visibility. And right now we're in a world where there's a lot of uncertainty, cost of living, dare I say that word, tariffs, that's really affecting trade. So they're all looking for where are the different ways that I can cut costs, or maybe having manpower issues. So I think if you're looking for examples of digital transformation, I would just pick any industry, and I'm pretty sure that you could basically find. If it's not happening, I would definitely see that there would be some need for it because they need to engage online in some shape or form. I don't know if it was part of the same question or different, but any women that didn't make it into the book, oh, there was way more material. There are many sort of stories, but I think the ones that are in the book I chose because they shared an interesting example, something different, something from another country, an industry you may not know much about. For example, I used to live in New Zealand. I talk about some of the things that they are doing there, a community there to help Maori girls get interested in technology. And the reason why I wanted to show a bit of spotlight on Maori girls, because it might not be aware about this culture for these very much. And one of the things that they have is trying to get, ethnic minorities, which we see here in Asia as well, people from different backgrounds that are considered minorities. How do we bring them into that conversation? And one of the things that they are doing, there's a lot of work shadowing, running lots of different workshops, practical workshops to get girls interested in. So I chose stories that would be fun to read. And I think my test was always, is this something that I would want to read about?
I think that's always a good question, right? Is this something I would love to read about? I think that's probably, a very nice guiding thread when you're writing about something and putting out a book and deciding what should come in there or not. Just want to say, coming back to the earlier question that we had, Agnieszka, I think, shared something really interesting and important. It's about curiosity, right? It's all about curiosity and putting yourself out there and learning and having some goal that you would like to achieve. And I just thought that this was really interesting and worth sharing. I think we're nearing the end of our conversation, Nimisha, and maybe a last question that I would like to put to you. We have a lot of women also reaching out to us or joining the community that who say we have had our career and now we really see AI developing so fast and we want to be part of this. We want to help shape it, right? Because we're also worried about maybe the path that technology is taking so far, but we have no background in this space, right? And this obviously also goes to tech. So we see many who want to switch careers to move into tech, in particular into AI. Again, what is it that you recommend they do? To take part in this digital revolution.
Wonderful. And it's great that you are actually having women asking you this question and wanting to be part of this. So this really goes back to the superpowers and the digital skills. So in the book, I talk about those soft skills. So you've got your technical skills, but I also talk about soft skills and this important digital leadership. So quite often we have these digital transformation that's happening either in government or in businesses or in hospitals and schools. These projects quite often don't need to have some level of technical understanding, but I think you can learn some of those on the job. But the key thing you need is to be able to work with people.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these problems that we are trying to solve, your company, your personal challenge, or your startup, they need people skills, they need collaborations. Complex issues need people from different backgrounds. And one of the things, whilst I love working with people from different backgrounds, you need a strong leader that can actually help bring them together, because there will be different points of view and differences. And so that's where I really see that there is real scope for those soft skills and those superpowers to come in and to navigate some of those digital transformation projects, or how we use AI. Ask those simple questions as a way of cutting through some of that conflict. Are we using AI ethically? Where is the data coming from? Have we verified that? Are we expanding into a new market? Are there new rules and regulations in that particular market? Having leadership skills, I think, which are relevant no matter what age you are. I believe in self-leadership. And I think having the ability to bring people and change mindsets and bringing that culture is very important. So definitely more scope there, in my opinion.
Wonderful, Nimisha. Thank you. I feel we've come full circle. We've touched again on the superpower. And I love that we're ending a conversation around AI tech and the digital economy by actually, looking into, what you bring in and what is important to you, and this question of self-leadership. Well, thank you very much for wonderful conversations, for a lot of, really interesting insights. We will probably share also a little write-up today. Yeah, we will be launching more of these webinars after the autumn. We're putting together a really lovely program. So for everyone who was here today, please stay tuned. Yeah, Nimisha, thanks again. And we're looking forward to hosting you again for your next book or for whatever you're up to.
Thank you so much. Really looking forward to also participating in your future webinars as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone. Have a lovely day.